Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Nedarim daf Chaf Daled. We're going to begin on Chaf Gimel Amud Beis, the second line from the bottom. Boilhu. So the Gemara asked the following question: Pliga Rabban Alehi to Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Olo. Does the Rabbanan, do they argue with Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, or do they agree with him? Obviously, the question is, what does he say? So on this, Rashi starts off by saying, regarding whether or not we say that the neder that was made was not a valid neder, but was rather nidre ziruzin. So what is this talking about? So the Ran helps us out a little bit more and says as follows: Iboilhu diika spooky bahachi. This is suffix mishum dilma adkan lo kam rabbanan de nidre ziruzin havi. So when it came to the Mishnah before, which was the Rabbanan, you had a moicher and a lokeach, a seller and a buyer, and they initially said, one said 5, one said 3, but the truth is, and they ended up having a pshara in between, or they said one said 4, one said 2, and they have a pshara of 3 in the middle. So one said 4, one said 2, so they both wanted 3. So the neder was clearly just a way to get the person to buy the item or for the moicher to drop his price. So they didn't want the neder. Both of them did not want the neder to take place. So, however, so this is talking about a situation where you have a person, he wants you to eat by him, and you kind of are hesitant, you don't want to, you're refusing, you're masarif, and it makes a neder. So the question is that also nidri zrizus, to try to get your friend to come and to eat by you? Says the Ran, maybe actually he's being serious in this neder. So in that situation, especially we find that one party actually didn't want to participate, doesn't want to go. So therefore maybe it actually is a valid neder. Unlike the shita of Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov that says that's also a case of nidri zrizus. Okay, ziruzin. So furthermore, if let's say Luyitzur that they taka do hold, unlike that shita, the Rabbanan argue. So who do we pass like? So Tashma did not know. A person says to his friends, we continue to Chavdal Amud Aleph. Person says, Kainim, person makes a neder, She'eni nehenelcha, I'm not going to derive benefit from you. Im iyata noitel levincha, if you noitel levincha, if you do not take for your child kur shel chitin, which is a substantial amount of grain, ushtei chaviyah shel yayin, or 2 barrels full of wine. So harizeh yochel hateres nidroi. So we can say that this neder is nothing. Shelo al pi chacham, you don't even need a chacham to remove it, which means this would also constitute as a nidr's reason. So why? Because you can always say klom amarta el b'shvil kvaidi. I always said this because of my honor. Says Rashi, hamuder lahater nidra ba'atzmo. He could be matir the neder himself. Shalal pi chacham, even without a chacham. Why? He could figure it out himself. Shachaloymulo hamuder klom amarti litin livni kach v'kach el b'shvil kvaidi. I was only doing it because of my honor. Zehu kvaidi. So it's my honor not to accept it. So I know you're making this neder. This neder is in order for my honor, so my child should get something. It's more of an honor not to accept it. Says Rashi, Yosef kabel sarich. I don't need these gifts. So time of the armor zehu kvaidi. It's only because he said, no, this is my honor is to not accept these gifts. If he didn't have this, then nedhu would tackle be a neder. So mani Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov nidri's reason habi. This is nidri's reason, and it shouldn't work. So it must be that's like the Rabbanan, and then they argue. It says Rashi, the Sabri, the law you have a nidri zuzin, the shemam pligi. So we see they actually argue. No oilam. So and maybe it's like the Rabbanan, and the only reason why is because he has this point of zekvaidi. But if you don't have zekvaidi, then we would say taka is a neder. It would be a good neder. So it must be like Rabbi that there is a machlokas. Hello, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Might Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov behind the nidrahavi. Maybe in this situation it is dafka. Maybe he did want it to be a neder. Otherwise, why? Because he can say, "Lo kalbana." I'm not a dog. Demis hanina minoch, that I get enjoyment from you. V'lo mishanis minoi, and I don't give hana. You don't get hana from me. In other words, maybe in this situation is not zrizin, even according to the Shita of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, and therefore it's not this the Rabbanon, but everyone will hold it's not zrizin, because the person could say, "Listen, I meant what I said, and it's dafka. I want it to be a neder, because I don't want that I'm only receiving and not giving. I'm not like a dog," says the Ran. Mishum hachi ikol meimer de dafka kaimer she'enu ratzali hanis mimenu, that he doesn't want to get hana from him. So listen, I only want to continue this relationship of me receiving from you, is if you're also able to accept from me. Very interesting, because otherwise you'll feel like a dog. The notion of a dog is a dog needs an owner, and even though of course the dog shows love and affection, it doesn't give anything in monetary value. You have to constantly, every single day, be feeding your dog. You have to constantly be walking your dog. You have to be constantly bathing your dog. So it's a one-way street. Again, a person may want to own a dog because they get an emotional connection to the dog. They get love, they get affection and companionship. But a dog does not give you anything as far as anything monetarily. A dog will receive and expect the next day to receive food again. So, and that's not how this person wants. That's not what he wants. TA29. Ha'oimer chaver kainim shein in henelach im iata noitel avincha kor al shalchitin madua in zen nidri's reason l'kuli alma. So why is it not? So this is what I wrote. Since you don't want to treat, you'll be treated like a dog, or to give and not receive like a melech. Okay, we'll get to that. Since he used a meduik lashon, it's possible he was being dafka in makbid. Okay. Toshma. That you will not get benefit from me. So he's saying, I want you to give my kid these things. Ramer oimer ad shiyitain. The neder is chal until it's actually given. Ram omer afzeh yochel hater is nidroi. Shual pi chacham, the guy could still get out of this. Yochel oimer harini ki'ilu his kabalti. It's like I accepted. In other words, he doesn't actually have to accept it. He was a lab dafka. Now, time diamer hareni kiu his kabalti. Kolav hachi nederhu money. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yankiv nidri's reason havi. So it should not be a neder. Now, lab rabbanon a pligi. No, we oilam Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Might Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov that in this case, Rabbi Elazar will be maskim that it is actually a valid neder. Behind in Nidrahavi, we don't say it's Nidri's reason. He was Dafka. Yishim di'armalei la malkana. I'm not a king. That I let you get benefit. V'at lo mehenisli, and you don't give anything back. So again, based on just the opposite way of looking at it, so in that situation, it's possible he was exact. Armalei markashish b'reid ram chistel ravashi tashma. Nidri oinsin. Which we're going to see in a few blocks from now on Chav Zayin. Hediru chaver shoichel etzlo. So you made a neder to your friend about eating next to him. V'choilahu, and he's sick. V'chol b'noi, or his son is sick. Or she'ikpo nahar, there's a river separating you and him. So in that situation, it's an einus. It's not your fault. So because of that, it's not considered to be a neder. Halav hachi, and let's say it wasn't for any of these reasons, neder who would be a neder. Mani Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov's reason havi. So l'chayra, it should still not be a neder. Elav rabbanan pligi. So again, l'chayra, it's a raya that the rabbanan argue. No, the Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Mi sabrit the adre mizamna lizmina. It doesn't mean that he was made a neder from time to time. Lo, the mizamina adre limizamna, that he wanted actually to get invited to his home. Diarmele mizamisli lasuda sich. I want to be invited to your meal. Armele ein neder zeh olecha. This neder is not upon you. V'nadar, and he made a neder v'chol hu or shechol b'nai or sheikba nahar hari elu nidri oinsin. So, if it is to get someone to come, that is considered to be a neder's reason, that you're trying to entice someone to come to you. However, this is the opposite situation, where the person who wanted to come is the one that made the neder. That's the situation. It's not the person who has the house made the neder to try to entice you to come to my house. No, it's talking, but you, my guest, who I want to have, is refusing, is the opposite. The guest is the one that wants to come over, and you may not want him to come. So that's what the case is. Okay, so Tashma Yasser Cain. Even more than this, the person makes this neder. Im iata misareach etzli. If you're not a guest by me, v'toichel imi pas chama, and you're gonna eat nice warm bread, v'tishne mi kois chamin, nice cup of hot water, a tea, v'lo hikbid kenegdai, and this guy is makbid. Af elu nidri's reason. This is also considered to be nidri's reason. It's not a neder. So let's look at the Ran. What's the Yasser Cain? So the Ran says, Afagav the Shaykh Meimar. Even though you could say, Lav Kalbana, I'm not a dog, that you give me, but you never get back. Sharhu Oyser Hanas Hamzumanim Alatzmai. Mishum Hachi Ikol Meimar de Bedavka Nadar. Feel Hachi Amar Belezer and Yaakov to Nidri's reasoning. Question 7. Question 7 says, Yasser Cain. This case, a person says to his friend, Kainim, he's making neder, Shani nehenloch, I'm not going to get hana from you. Im iatam is arich etzli, if you don't have me a guest by, if you're not a guest by me, and eat with me bread and this. So he said that's also Nidri's reason. So what's the Yasser Cain? 2 answers. So the Ran says, first of all, maybe we have the Havamina, Salcha Datachamina, the Dafka Kaimer. The reason why it's not Nidri's reason, that he's being exact. Mishum Deloy Kalbana, as Ran said, because he can say, I'm not a dog, that all you keep giving me things, I want you to come to my house. I want you to have some bread and some hot tea. So therefore he was actually being serious when he made that neder. Or Sakadatamina, the Davka Kaimer Kivan, since he was so particular in the language that he used this specific language about, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that. So the fact that he specified, so as I didn't see this, but the Ran says, Mishum, the Sakadatamina Kivan, the Miyachev Yermer Paschama V'Koishel Chamen Davka Nadar Vos Rizi Ba'alma Kamash Malan, the Af Elu Nidri's reason. So, and that's another interpretation. So it's either because he doesn't want to feel like a dog, or because he was so specific in his language. It must be he meant it. Okay, so v'lo hadol chachamim, the chachamim do not agree. So my lo hadol chachamim, lav, is it not? As we continue chafdal bebeis, what does it mean the chachamim don't agree to this? So it means that maybe they feel with kamaisa, even in the first case. What does that mean? So Rashi is Hanach del El Shmamina. Maybe it's talking about the things that we mentioned previously, and therefore we see that they do argue. Ushmamina pliga rabbanale Shmamina. So my havala. So what is the outcome? What does that mean? Rashi says Ihavi hilchos kavaster belezer. Dehavi nidre's reason umutter or not. So Tashma Diam Rab Huna halach Reb Elazar ben Yaakov v'chein Rab Adam Rabba halach Reb Elazar ben Yaakov. So in the case of the person's Messiah refusing to come to eat, you make this neder to try to entice them to come. So we say that that's not a neder. It's just considered to be nidre's reason to try to entice him to come. Okay. Next Mishnah. Nidri Havai. A person makes a neder of Nidri Havai, like something which is some form of false, something which is false. So Oimer Koinem Imlo Isi B'derech Hazeh Ko'ili Mitzrayim. So one example is that I am making this neder if I didn't see on the road the amount of people in Oli Mitzrayim. Now, that, if we look in the Ran, there's two different types of Nidrei Havoi. There's two situations. Chad is Shaykh Be Guzma, which is this case here. It's a commonly used exaggeration of truth. Dani Kol Mitzrayim, the Ovid Inish Achi, Dachi Chazi Inish Tuva, Gazim, Ve'omer Ko Oli Mitzrayim. If you were in this huge gathering, you're like, oh wow, must be just like the Oli Mitzrayim. So maybe when he said that, what he was using it as a guzma, but he really meant it. So even though of course it's not possible that he saw Oli Mitzrayim, but the fact that he said this and people generally speak like that, the chiddush is you would maybe think that it actually is a neder, because after all, he's saying again, I'm making a neder if I didn't see this amount of people. Well, maybe of course he didn't see that amount of people, but even if he was in a large crowd, so you can say, so maybe that's what he's referring to, because that's how people speak. Nonetheless, it's considered to be nidri havai, and therefore, because that's not chal. Or, says the Mishnah, im lo isi nachash ki kairas beisabad, that he doesn't see a snake with a ridged back, just like this beisabad, this press. Now in this, the Ran says it's something different. It says, v'chad lo shaykh be guzma. The second statement is really like a false statement, but it's not like an exaggeration, which is the hainu nachash kikaris beisabad. Why? The kivan the mafreshina. The Gemara is going to explain the loy nachash gadol kaimer. It's not talking about this big snake. El torif. It's a smooth snake. Lo shaykh leimer derech guzma. Torif kikaris beisabad. We don't say that such a snake, which is smooth, could possibly be like this. She'ein shum nachash torif klal. There is no such snake that has these attributes. So therefore, when he's saying this statement, which is a total falsehood, so you would think, he says, oh, this neder is chal if I didn't see such a thing. Well, we know he didn't see such a thing because it doesn't exist. Nonetheless, it doesn't work. It's not a neder. Says the Ran, she'im kain lo haylo litlois isura batanai. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. Tana. Nidrei havai, which is our case, mutarin in and we're going to look at the gears on the side. Shvos havoi, even though it says in the Gemara asura, and if you look on the side, it says kashem shen nidrei havai mutarim kach shvos havoi mutaris. So therefore, what the Gemara is saying is that just like again when it comes to a neder, the lashon of a neder, that it's considered to be nothing because it's considered to be havoi, it's foolishness, either because it's b'derech guzma, even though it's b'derech guzma, or because it was absolutely not true. So therefore it's mutter. So it's also, if it was said b'lashon shvua, the same din is true. Now heichidami shvuos havai. So what is the case of making an oath, which is havai? Ilema dir shvua, making a shvua imlo reisi b'derech hazeh. If I didn't see on this particular path, says the Ran, v'nir b'einai desmir le'labai lafum okimta dechikatani kach shvuos havai mutarais. Fine. Let's continue. So if imlo reisi b'derech hazeh midam kaimer, then he's saying nothing. So Omer Abaya, the Omer shvua sherisi, he says shvua sherisi. Amalei Rava imkain lamali lamemar. So why is he saying it? But dumi de neder katani. It sounds like a neder. El Omer Rava ba'omer yiasru peras ha'olam alai b'shvua. That he's answering these fruits with the use of a shvua. Imoisi b'derech hazeh ko'el mitzrayim. So Omer Ravinu Ravashi v'dilma hai gavra kina dishum shimani chaza. Maybe this person saw a bunch of ants. So maybe it's actually a shvuas emes, which is the amount of Oli Mitzrayim. Va'asikluhu, va'asikluhain, shema Oli Mitzrayim v'shaper mishtaba. So maybe he's actually making a correct shvua. Says the Rashi over here, nimolois, ants, Mukubatzes harb. They're all gathered together. Rabbi Yachad Kolim Mitzrayim to Efsher. So that's something which is not even a guzma. It's possible. It's not talking about people. It's talking about these ants. So in this, the Gemara continues on Chaf Hem and Aleph and says, "Armalei ki mishtaba." When a person makes a shua, adaita didon mishtaba. It's the shua is made the way that we understand. The anan lo maskina nashin ashum shemane. A person doesn't have das on these ants. Says Rashi, which is where we're going to stop. Rashi says, fine. Rashi says, "Kedersh b'nei adam nishboyin ve'ein derech b'nei adam l'hikro in the moam olam Mitzrayim." People don't call the ants like olam Mitzrayim. They don't use such a language, so it cannot possibly be referring to a situation where he has that in mind. Okay, so we're gonna stop there, but let's see a couple more questions, maybe. Question 8. Hanishba shel yoichel peros im lo ra b'derech ka'im Mitzrayim o nachash karis beis abad him neser b'peros. Does that actually ask the fruits? Oh, dehabi shvua shav. Is it considered like a shvua shav? So he says like this: Im lo ra ka'im Mitzrayim. If he didn't see that amount of people, ein neser, so he doesn't become aser. The ein shvua shav, but it's still not considered to be a shvua shav. But imor nachash karis beis abad also a nesar. However, havali shvua shav. In that situation, it is considered to be a shvua shav, which may be the same thing as TB30. Let's see. Which is my last question over here. Homer shvua shvisi b'derech hazeka Mitzrayim or shvua shvisi nachash karis beis abad him loikim shvua shav umadua. So. Ba'omer shreisi kol Mitzrayim, then ein loika. Why the abed inish de gazim v'kushta nishba? Because maybe that's actually truth. That's what how a person swears. Of a nachash karis beis abad loika, he will get malchus. Kivandol ishach guzma b'derech zeh l'chinam nishba. He made a shvua l'chinam, and therefore loika he gets malchus. Adkan.